If there's one thing I love more than Power Rangers, it's mother flippin' ninjas, man. From Scorpion in Mortal Kombat, to Snake Eyes from G.I. Joe, to more recently, Lego Ninjago, the Masters of Spinjitzu. However, when it comes to Power Rangers adapting ninja-based Sentai series, the results have been, well...
Power Rangers? Nobody told me there would be Power Rangers!
And yes, I unfortunately have to go to Ninja Storm for reference, since it's the only directly adapted Ninja Power Ranger series. I know that Kikuger was also adapted, but the Alien Rangers were, well, aliens, and while you could sort of count Jungle Fury with the martial arts, it is more of an animal and kung fu themed series rather than ninja themed. And the less said about Power Ranger Samurai, the better. So going into this season, I am a little concerned with how things will play out, mainly because of history, and not because of how lackluster Dino Supercharge ended. Side note, I'll try my hardest not to compare this to Ninjago, mostly because I think it's unfair to compare this one season to a series that's about to start its 7th year on TV. But enough about other superhero series, it's a new year, so let's dive into the first episode of Power Rangers Ninja Steel, Return to the Prism. The episode opens with an abrupt narration expositing how an artifact known as the Ninja Nexus Prism crash landed on Earth in the backyard of a Ninja Master and his 2 sons. Believing that the Prism chose him and his family for a reason, the Ninja Master removed the metallic crust around the Prism, called Ninja Steel, revealing yet another artifact inside the Prism known as the Ninja Nexus Star. Man, this alien MacGuffin has so many things in and around it, you'd think it was a Russian stacking doll. Somehow the Master is able to reach inside the Prism and pull out the star, while his son Brody is outside training before aliens arrive on the scene. Hearing the screams of his son, the Master gathers up the Ninja Steel, handing it to his other son Aiden, and telling the boy to go hide before going outside with his katana to confront the monsters. The lead villain, Galvanax, hands Brody over, telling the Master he's surrounded, before we meet a monster that sounds a lot like Snide and Talmon? Galvanax then demands that the Master hand over the Ninja Nexus Star.
Give me the Ninja Nexus Star!
You can't give it to him, Dad.
He has no choice! What?
The legend is true. He's become a Power Ranger.
That was some Dragon Ball Z right there. The newly morphed Ranger engages in a fight with Galvanax, but once Brody is again captured by Not Snide, Galvanax uses the distraction to gain the upper hand, causing the Master to demorph. Galvanax then grabs the Ninja Nexus Star and starts absorbing its power before we get our new intro and theme for the season, which I'm not a fan of. I mean, it's got a good beat and is a little catchy, but doesn't really bring that much else to the table, with lyrics that are so forgettable you could replace them with anything. I'm reviewing a brand new episode of Ninja Steel. Man, this song's kinda lame, Ninja Steel. Also, the theme is so short, you can pinpoint exactly where it loops so it can cover the traditional minute-long Power Rangers intro. Anyway, back to the episode proper, Galvanax continues draining the power from the Ninja Nexus Star, but before he can finish, the Master strikes down the star with his katana, breaking it into 6 pieces. The resulting explosion causes Brody's father to disappear, but in his place stands the Prism, where inside Brody sees the pieces of the Nexus Star turn into their own individual Power Stars. Brody tries to retrieve a star from inside the Prism, but is pushed aside by Galvanax, who tries unsuccessfully to take the stars for himself. Galvanax then decides to take the Prism with him into space, along with Brody, before we fast forward 10 years, finding a teenage Brody still on board Galvanax's ship, along with his robotic companion Redbot, and the shapeshifting Mick, played by Power Rangers alum Kelson Henderson. Brody brings up that the trio should finally escape the ship, but Mick is quick to point out that they're in frickin' space, and thus have nowhere to escape to. Brody says that Mick can figure out where to go since he's a mechanical genius, which doesn't make any sense, but before we can dwell on that line too long, Ripcon walks in. Brody shows off that he's still got some ninja skills by taking Ripcon's sword, and as the general takes it back, he says that being a ninja master couldn't save Brody's father. Man, that was a low blow. Talmon, Madamodius, comes in and says that the crew should get the Ninja Nexus Prism ready for the show. Yeah, it turns out that since Galvanax couldn't get the Ninja Power Stars out of the Prism, he instead decided to create a game show around the Prism called Galaxy Warriors, where monsters from across the universe fight for a chance to pull a star from the Prism, though so far no one has succeeded. On this episode, the 2 monsters fighting each other are a Fear Cat from Power Rangers Operation Overdrive and one of Vengix's bodies from Power Rangers RPM. I know they have different names here, but I'm going to keep referring to them as their past series counterparts, if for no other reason than this would be a really cool fan fight. The Fear Cat ends up defeating Vengix, so he gets the chance to get a star from the Prism, and while he is able to reach inside the Prism, he's immediately electrocuted. Galvanax expresses his frustration at how even after 10 years, he's still no closer to getting his hands on the Ninja Power Stars, at which point Madamodius Proteus suggests that Galvanax create his own power stars by melting down the ninja steel the prism was covered in when it originally crashed, so Galvanax orders the ship back to Earth. Overhearing this, Brody decides to escape and find the ninja steel before Galvanax, when we cut to a high school on Earth where we meet an aspiring magician named Preston and new student Sarah, who's such a big Back to the Future fan that she built her own hoverboard. I know that's not really what happened, but how else do you explain why it's pink?
Hey, McFly, you bojo! Don't burst don't work on water! Unless you've got power!
Preston hands Sarah an invitation to his magic show, which she finds really sweet before we cut back to the ship in Earth's orbit, where Brody has successfully taken the Ninja Nexus prism ready to escape. However, he is dumb enough to blab about his escape plan within earshot of some foot soldiers who give chase. Back on Earth, Sarah looks around her new school before running into a jock named Victor Vincent and his stereotypical nerd sidekick Monty. Victor tries so hard to impress Sarah that he takes credit for trophies that don't have his name on them before taking her hoverboard for a spin, resulting in him embarrassing Preston at his magic show. Sarah demands that Victor apologize to Preston, but he just leaves with Monty, who says this is the first time that anyone has enjoyed one of Preston's magic shows. Sarah apologizes to Preston for what happened, and the two seem to really hit it off as she helps him clean up the mess Victor made. Back on the ship, Ripcon tries to stop Brody's escape, but he and his friends jump out of the garbage chute with the prism and end up free falling down to the earth below. Mick turns into a rock to protect himself, while Redbot tries to save Brody with his jet boosters, only for the two to make a rough landing. Sarah and Preston see the falling debris in the distance, with Sarah wanting to see what it is, and Preston joining her since it could be dangerous. Back on the ship, Galvanax sends the Fear Cat to go get the prism, while Brody wakes up back on Earth before helping Redbot to his feet. Brody tries to contact Mick with his datacom, but when he doesn't respond, he tells Redbot to scan the area for Mick while he hides the nearby Ninja Nexus prism. Man, say that 5 times fast. However, before Brody can even touch the prism, he's suddenly attacked by the Fear Cat, and though he tries to fight the monster alone, he's overpowered rather quickly. Help arrives for Brody though, as Sarah and Preston ram the Fear Cat into a tree, which apparently incapacitates the monster long enough for the trio to slowly pull glowing power stars out of the prism.
It's glowing, like the Nexus Star did 10 years ago, before my dad pulled it out. Can't believe it.
Amazing.
How did I just do that?
Impossible.
I'm trying to remember. That thing crashed into our backyard, and my dad pulled a star out of it, just like we did. He turned into some sort of ninja superhero. The monsters called him Power Ranger.
A Power Ranger.
Wait, is she serious about not knowing what a Power Ranger is? Or because of the whole time travel thing last season, Power Rangers have been existed for centuries? You know what? We don't need to get into that right now. Let's just move on with the episode. Anyway, our three heroes put their power stars into magically appearing star morphers, which, after they're blasted by the Fear Cat, morphs the three into Power Rangers. The new Rangers use their powers and ninja frog blasters to take down the Fear Cat pretty easily, and after the fight, the team gets to work burying the prism with rocks, with Brody explaining his backstory. Brody then tries to part ways with the two people who saved his life, but Sarah and Preston refuse, wanting to stay together as a team. Brody then says that their next step is to go back to his place for the Ninja Steel, before the prism suddenly bursts out of the ground, flying off, and the episode ends with Brody saying that there's still 3 power stars inside the prism, as To Be Continued appears on the screen. This episode is pretty good, all things considered. While I initially felt that the promos for this season showed a plot a bit too similar to Dino Charge's, the story so far is radically different. For example, while we still have a Red Ranger who lost his father 10 years ago, here we immediately get to see the incident that caused his father's disappearance, with the added bonus that Brody was kidnapped by Galvanax, creating the strong foundation for a rivalry between the Red Ranger and main villain. That said, I'm not sure how to feel about Brody as a character so far. Outside of his backstory, I can't get that good of a read on the guy, not the least of which because most of his dialogue is exposition, which is very awkwardly delivered. It's a real shame too, because I thought Brody's father was very strong in the few scenes he was in, conveying much more intensity than I'm used to seeing on this show. Though I can't pretend that the awkward dialogue is solely isolated to Brody, since the other Rangers also have this problem, just in smaller bursts. However, Preston and Sarah did leave a much stronger impression on me than Brody, helped by the fact that the two have really good chemistry on screen together. Through their interactions, I'm able to see Sarah as a strong-willed but caring person who helps others, and Preston as a person who's happy to be following his dream of becoming a magician, but also takes the responsibilities of a Ranger when he realizes the world is counting on them. The side characters were also introduced pretty well, not only because Kelson Henderson has finally returned to this franchise in a consistent on-screen role, but also due to the fact that we have a new Bulk and Skull type duo in Victor and Monty, who, despite having the potential to be the most annoying characters on the show, did make me chuckle a few times in this episode. I do have to question the sheer amount of side characters in this show though, since I've seen previous Ranger series put way too much focus on the side characters rather than the main team, which can create some very awkward situations. However, the large cast actually works in this episode's favor, since it makes the scope of the season much wider, and the idea of bringing together monsters from across the galaxy to fight Power Rangers is so cool that it makes up for how much of a generic villain Galvanex is. Plus, it gives Chip Lynn the chance to again use a good chunk of original footage for the first episode, because he can take old costumes from previous seasons and call them someone else. Side note, there's a part of me that's really impressed with this smaller team of Rangers' ability to take down a Fear Cat, since I've seen those guys take down all 6 of the Overdrive Rangers. I also find it funny that despite having Kelson Henderson in the cast, the show decided to use a completely different actor to voice the Fear Cat, even though they're using the suit for a character that was voiced by Kelson Henderson in Operation Overdrive. What a missed opportunity that was. Overall, while I didn't love this episode, it is a pretty strong introduction to the season. There's a lot of story packed into these 20 minutes, and while I thought some of the dialogue and acting was a bit off here and there, I'm going to chalk that up to the cast not being as comfortable in their roles, which indeed could improve over time. I mean, if Power Rangers has taught me anything over the years, it's not to judge a Ranger by their first line read. So with that in mind, this episode gets a pretty good recommendation from me. I'm Nick, aka Iron Man 1993, and may the power protect you. Please subscribe for reviews of Ninja Steel, episode reviews. Also check out Dino Charge reviews too, episode reviews. Also there's Ninjago, which has reviews too. Go! Please subscribe.